European leaders in favor of a restrictive migration policy are gathering in Budapest today for a meeting of minds. It follows yesterday's vote in Hungary to stop Soros. That's a series of laws that criminalize any individual or group who help asylum seekers, including NGOs. Well, the move defies the EU and human rights groups. Amongst those at the meeting will be Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, an immigration hardliner, as well as Hungarian leader Viktor Orban. And MPs also passed an amendment saying, and quote, alien population cannot settle in Hungary, outlawing EU attempts to relocate asylum seekers from Italy and Greece. Well, joining us from Paris now is Dutch journalist Stefan de Vries. Stefan, this is, again, another complicated topic. Why is there so much support on tightening restrictions on asylum in Hungary?
Well, Viktor Orban sees himself as the defender of Christian Europe, as the protector, as a perceived Muslim invasion. And this rhetoric brought him a crushing victory in the last elections in April. He won a 2/3 majority in the parliament. And, well, we've seen that in other countries as well. Being tough on immigration attracts voters. We've seen it in Italy, in Austria and other EU member states. And the Stop Soros campaign slogan was a very popular one. Now, George Soros is seen as the person who is organizing this imaginary foreign invasion, because if you look at the numbers, Hungary has actually one of the lowest immigration rates of the whole European Union. But George Soros is seen as the personification of this invasion. And the fact that Soros is Hungarian, well, it probably really bothers Orban, who sees Soros as some traitor of his country. And that may be an explanation why this Stop Soros bill was voted by such a large majority yesterday in Budapest.
Obviously, human rights groups obviously are not going to be happy with this. What can they do? What will their response be to this?
Well, of course, they are very disappointed and even upset by this new rule. Their hope, of course, is the European Union. The Council of Europe, which is the continent's leading human rights institution, is currently reviewing the bill. They had asked the Hungarians to wait with the vote, but Budapest decided to ignore this call. But it may well be that this bill is not respecting any European laws. I think later today, the European Commission will issue a reaction to what's happening now in Budapest. But for the moment, the human rights organizations, well, they really have to comply with the new rules because they risk a prison sentence of for a 1 year if they help illegal immigrants to apply for asylum. So the only hope now is the European Commission and the Council of Europe. And I think later today we will have reactions from Brussels and probably also a warning to Viktor Orban.
Yeah, but Stefan, it's not the first warning. The EU has already said before Hungary, you cannot do this, but Hungary went ahead and did it. So actually, will that change anything? Will the EU's reaction change anything?
You're absolutely right. Viktor Orban has been defying the European Union for many years now. And we've seen that Brussels is basically, well, they can't do anything. They can threaten. We are seeing the same thing with Poland. They are, of course, trying to get Poland on track because they are not respecting, according to Brussels, the basic rules of a law society. So they can threaten, but what can they do? There is a procedure to exclude the European member states, but this has never been used in the history of Europe, and it would be very difficult because it's very unpopular, especially now in these times that populist parties are gaining more and more votes. So yeah, the European Union can yell, they can shout, but at the end, it's Viktor Orban who wins.
And very briefly, Stefan, what's interesting is, again, we're going to have this summit, and Hungary will be in the midst of all those leaders. What do you expect from that?
Well, not much. I think the agreement will be that Hungary should respect European law, that the European Commission will look into it. But more importantly, there's another extra mini summit this weekend in Brussels with Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, a number of other countries on the issue. So we see that the migrant issue is really, well, we've talked about this many times this week already, is one of the most urgent this week. And it really it's not logical because, as we've seen, the numbers are down. There are actually very few immigrants coming to Europe now. And even in Hungary, there are currently around 3,000 refugees living in Hungary on a population of 10 million. So there's a huge difference between reality and perception, and it will be the task of the European politicians to explain that this gap is not real, and but it will be very difficult since the populists are so popular.
Yeah, but what will be interesting is to watch the behind the scenes in those summits. Thank you very much, Stefan de Vries.